En una casa donde el poder dicta cada latido, una acusación injusta rompe la aparente perfección. La tensión estalla cuando un hombre acostumbrado a imponer su verdad señala a la persona más vulnerable, sin imaginar que un simple gesto, una pequeña voz, revelará lo que nadie se atrevía a decir. Un objeto perdido, una acusación devastadora, un niño que ve lo que los adultos ocultan. Y en medio del silencio cargado de secretos, la mentira amenaza con destruir más que reputaciones. Amenaza con destruir un corazón inocente. Si esta historia te atrapó desde el primer segundo, suscríbete al canal y ayúdanos a llegar a los primeros 1000 inscritos. Tu apoyo mantiene viva cada nueva historia. In the grand halls of the Blackwell Mansion, where gas lamps flickered like hesitant stars against the velvet drapes of 1887 New York, a storm was brewing, not from the autumn winds rattling the windows, but from the fury of Ethan Blackwell himself. The Tycoon, broad-shouldered and stern-faced at 42, paced the polished oak floors of his study. His empire of steel mills and railroads had built this opulence. Yet tonight, it felt like a cage. His 5-year-old son, little Noah, clutched a wooden train in his tiny hands, eyes wide with confusion as the adults' voices rose. Olivia Hargrove, the young maid of 20, stood frozen in the corner. Her simple grey woolen dress, high-necked and modest as befitted her station, trembled slightly with her shallow breaths. Strands of auburn hair escaped her cap, framing a face pale with shock. She had served the Blackwells for 2 years, her hands calloused from scrubbing silver and floors, her dreams tucked away like the wildflowers she pressed in secret between book pages. But now Ethan's gaze pinned her like a thief, caught red-handed. "You!" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the leather-bound bookshelves. "You stole the sapphire brooch from my late wife's jewelry box. I found it hidden in your quarters. Explain yourself, girl, before I summon the authorities." Olivia's heart pounded. The brooch, an heirloom of deep blue fire, symbol of Ethan's cherished marriage to Eliza, gone 3 years now, had vanished days ago. She had polished the box that morning, her fingers lingering on the empty velvet slot. "Sir, I swear on my mother's grave, I touched nothing. I've been loyal. Please, believe me." Ethan's fists clenched, his dark hair, streaked with early grey from relentless boardroom battles, fell across his furrowed brow. He was a man forged in the fires of the Gilded Age, where fortunes rose on cunning and crushed the weak beneath. Yet grief had softened his edges, or so he thought, until this betrayal stung like salt in a wound. Loyal? Maids like you eye the shine of wealth every day. Victoria saw you near the safe yesterday. Didn't you, my dear? From the doorway, Victoria Langford stepped forward, her silk gown of emerald green rustling like whispered secrets. At 28, she was the picture of refined beauty. Porcelain skin, golden curls piled high with pearl combs, her corseted figure accentuating the hourglass silhouette of high society. Engaged to Ethan for 3 months, she had swept into his life like a summer breeze, promising to heal his broken family. Her lips curved in a sympathetic smile, but her blue eyes held a glint sharper than cut glass. "I'm afraid so, Ethan. I didn't want to say anything, but she was lingering too long. Perhaps desperation drove her." Noah, perched on the edge of a velvet armchair, tugged at his father's trouser leg. The boy, with his mop of curly brown hair and innocent freckles, had been the light in Ethan's shadowed world since Eliza's fever took her. He adored Olivia, who told him stories of far-off places while tucking him in, her voice soft as a lullaby. Now he looked up, the wooden train forgotten. "Papa! It wasn't Livy." The room stilled. Ethan's rage faltered for a split second. "What did you say, son?" Noah pointed a chubby finger, not at Olivia, but across the room, straight at Victoria. "She took it. I saw her. In the hall. When you were at the mill." She put it in her pocket and smiled funny. Gasps rippled through the air. Victoria's smile cracked, her fan snapping shut like a trap. "Noah, darling, you must be mistaken. Children imagine things. I would never—" But Ethan turned, his eyes narrowing on his fiancée. The accusation hung heavy, a crack in the facade of his ordered life. Olivia watched, breath caught. As the Tycoon's world tilted, how could a child's simple truth unravel the threads of trust so swiftly? And what shadows hid in the heart of the woman meant to be his bride? The clock on the mantel chimed 9, its brass hands mocking the chaos. Outside, carriage wheels clattered on cobblestones, carrying the elite to soirees where fortunes were whispered and alliances forged. Inside, innocence stood accused, guilt pointed bare, and a family's fragile peace teetered on the edge of ruin. Olivia's mind raced. She had come to this city from a dusty farm in Pennsylvania, seeking escape from poverty's grip, only to find herself entangled in the web of the wealthy. Ethan, with his commanding presence and rare moments of kindness, like the extra coal he ordered for her room last winter, had become an unwitting anchor in her lonely days. But Victoria, her polished charm had always felt like a mask, her laughter too bright, her touches on Noah too possessive. Ethan knelt before his son, voice softening. "Tell me again, Noah. What did you see?" The boy repeated it, unwavering, his small voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Victoria paled, stepping back, her gloved hands twisting. "This is absurd. A child's fancy. Ethan, you can't possibly—" "I can, and I will," Ethan growled, rising. He turned to Olivia, his expression a storm of doubt and dawning regret. "Miss Hargrove, forgive me. Stay. We will get to the bottom of this." A servant murmured in the hall, drawn by the raised voices. Olivia nodded, her throat tight. Relief washed over her, mingled with fear. What vendetta drove Victoria to frame her? And how deep did the Tycoon's trust in his bride run? In that moment, as the gas flames danced shadows across their faces, Olivia felt the weight of unseen eyes watching. The Gilded Age glittered with gold, but beneath lay veins of deceit, where a maid's fate could hinge on a boy's pure heart. Little did she know, this accusation was merely the spark igniting a blaze that would consume secrets long buried and forge bonds unbreakable. The night deepened, and with it the mystery thickened. Who was the true thief of hearts and heirlooms, and what price would truth demand? If you're captivated by this tale of innocence, accusation, and hidden guilt in the heart of Gilded Age New York, hit that like button to show your support. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more gripping stories from the past. Drop a comment below. From which city and country are you watching? Your thoughts keep these narratives alive. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains of the Blackwell mansion, casting delicate patterns on the Persian rugs that muffled Olivia's footsteps as she carried a silver tray toward the breakfast parlor. It was the day after the storm in the study, and the house hummed with a fragile normalcy, like a melody played off-key. Servants bustled in the corridors below stairs, their aprons starched stiff, whispers of last night's uproar lingering like the scent of yesterday's pipe smoke. Olivia, at 20, moved with the quiet grace born of long hours and hidden yearnings. Her auburn hair was pinned neatly under her cap, her grey woolen dress mended at the hem from years of wear, its high collar brushing her chin like a constant reminder of her place. Down in the kitchen, the cook, Mrs. Finley, a stout woman of 50 with flour-dusted sleeves and a no-nonsense bun, stirred a pot of oatmeal over the coal stove. The air was thick with the aroma of fresh bread and brewing coffee, grounds ground by hand in the heavy iron mill. "Mind the silver, girl," Mrs. Finley muttered without looking up, her voice gravelly from years of commands. "And keep your head down. Tongues are wagging about that brooch business." Olivia nodded, setting the tray on the sideboard. She had risen before dawn, as always, to stoke the fires and polish the brass. The accusation still burned in her chest, a knot of injustice that made her hands tremble as she arranged the china, delicate patterns of blue willow, imported from across the sea. 2 years in this house, and she had learned its rhythms, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages outside on Fifth Avenue, the distant rumble of elevated trains carrying workers to the factories, the elite promenading in their bustled gowns and top hats under the autumn leaves turning gold in Central Park. Upstairs, the family gathered. Ethan Blackwell sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his broad frame filling the carved chair. At 42, he cut an imposing figure in his tailored wool vest and starched collar, the gold watch chain across his pocket a testament to his steel empire. His dark hair, touched with grey, was combed back severely, but shadows lingered under his eyes from a sleepless night. He unfolded the New York Times, its inked pages crisp with headlines of railroad expansions and labor strikes, the world beyond these walls churning with the Gilded Age's relentless ambition. Little Noah perched beside him, swinging his legs under the tablecloth. The boy's freckled face lit up as Olivia entered, balancing the tray with practiced ease. "Livy, did you bring the jam?" His voice was bright, innocent, cutting through the tension like sunlight through fog. She smiled faintly, her green eyes softening as she placed the pot of strawberry preserves before him, made from berries picked in the country estate last summer. "Yes, Master Noah, the one with the seeds, just as you like." In these small moments, she found solace. Noah had been her quiet joy since her arrival, his laughter a balm against the loneliness of city life. She had fled a Pennsylvania farm where drought had claimed her family's land, her parents' graves fresh in her mind. Here she mended stockings and told tales of rolling hills to the boy, dreaming of a life beyond scrubbing thresholds. Victoria Langford swept in moments later, her presence announced by the swish of her silk morning dress in deep burgundy, its puffed sleeves and fitted bodice accentuating her slender form. At 28, she embodied the polish of society, golden curls artfully arranged, a cameo brooch at her throat, gloves removed to reveal manicured hands. She had arrived from Boston 3 months prior, her family's textile fortune paving the way for this engagement. Leaning down, she kissed Ethan's cheek with a practiced affection, then ruffled Noah's hair. "Good morning, my dears. What a dreadful night we've had. That poor child must have been overtired, spinning such tales." Ethan folded the paper, his jaw tightening. He glanced at Olivia, who kept her eyes lowered, pouring his coffee from the silver pot. Steam rose in lazy curls, carrying the rich, dark scent. "Perhaps," he said evenly, though his voice held an edge. "But Noah doesn't lie. We searched your rooms this morning, Victoria. The brooch wasn't there." Victoria's laugh tinkled like crystal, but it didn't reach her eyes. She settled into her seat, unfolding a lace napkin. "Of course not. It must have been misplaced, or perhaps one of the other girls." "Enough." Ethan's fork paused midway to his mouth, loaded with eggs poached in cream. The room fell silent, save for the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Olivia felt the weight of their gazes, the invisible lines of class drawing taut. Maids did not speak unless spoken to, did not question the betrothed of their employer. Yet last night's events had shifted something. Ethan's brief apology lingered in her mind, a rare crack in the wall between servant and master. As she turned to leave, Noah tugged her apron. "Livy, tell Papa about the train story again. The one with the brave engineer." She hesitated, glancing at Ethan, his expression softened imperceptibly. "Go on, Miss Hargrove." "If you would." Olivia's cheeks warmed. She spoke softly, her voice steady as she described a locomotive racing through misty valleys, its whistle piercing the dawn. Noah clapped, eyes wide, but Victoria's fork scraped her plate sharply. Under the table, her foot shifted, brushing Olivia's hem. Accidental or a warning, the meal dragged on, filled with polite silences broken by talk of the upcoming opera season at the Academy of Music, where boxes were claimed by Vanderbilt and Astor Fortunes. Ethan mentioned a meeting at his downtown office overlooking the Hudson, where barges laden with iron ore floated like mechanical beasts. Victoria cooed over wedding plans, a gown of ivory taffeta from Paris, a reception at Delmonico's with crystal chandeliers and orchestras. But as Olivia cleared the plates, stacking them quietly on her tray, she caught a whisper from Victoria to Ethan. "We must be careful. Servants talk. It could ruin everything." Ethan's response was low, grunted. Olivia's heart quickened. The brooch was more than a jewel. It was Eliza's memory. A sapphire from their wedding voyage to Europe. Why frame her? Jealousy over Noah's affection, or something deeper, tied to the whispers she'd overheard, Victoria's family debts, Ethan's vast holdings. Later, in the linen closet, folding fresh sheets scented with lavender from the garden, Olivia paused. A folded note slipped from between the linens, its wax seal broken. She shouldn't look, but curiosity burned. Scrawled in elegant script, "The boy sees too much, handle it or the deal unravels." C. Her blood ran cold. Who was C and what deal? She tucked it away, pulse racing as footsteps approached from the hall. Outside, the city awoke fully. Vendors hawking newspapers, ladies in feathered hats strolling to shops on Broadway. But inside the mansion, the air grew heavier, the first true breath of conflict stirring the dust of secrets long settled. Olivia emerged from the closet, note hidden in her pocket, only to find Victoria waiting, arms crossed, her smile as sharp as a hidden blade. "You've been loyal, haven't you, Olivia?" Victoria said, voice honeyed. "See that it stays that way." The maid nodded, throat dry, but as Victoria turned away, Olivia glimpsed a flicker in the mirror, a shadow of desperation in the woman's eyes. The house, once a refuge, now felt like a labyrinth, and the maze's heart beat with dangers yet to unfold. What if the note was just the beginning? The afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of the Blackwell mansion, gilding the marble statues in the foyer like silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Olivia Hargrove stood frozen in the linen closet's dim light, the mysterious note burning a hole in her pocket. Victoria's parting words echoed in her ears. "See that it stays that way." A velvet threat wrapped in silk. At 20, Olivia had navigated the rigid hierarchies of service life with quiet resilience, but this felt like stepping onto thin ice over a frozen Hudson. She smoothed her grey woolen dress, its skirt brushing the polished floors, and slipped back into the corridor, heart hammering like the distant clang of factory bells. Downstairs, the house staff gathered in the servants' hall for their midday meal, a simple spread of bread, cheese and weak tea from the communal pot. Mrs. Finley presided at the head of the scarred oak table, her apron tied tight over her ample frame, greying hair escaping her mob cap. The other maids, young Irish girls with freckled cheeks and quick tongues, huddled together, their cotton dresses faded from endless washings. Whispers flew like sparrows. "Did you hear? The master's bride-to-be caught red-handed by the little one himself," murmured Bridget, a lanky girl of 18 with calloused hands from scouring pots. She tore at her bread, eyes darting, and poor Olivia, accused like some common thief, if it weren't for Master Noah. Olivia slid into a seat at the end, forcing a sip of tea that tasted of tannin and tension. The room smelled of damp wool and coal smoke from the nearby kitchen. She wanted to confide about the note, but loyalty bound her tongue. Servants gossiped, but betraying a secret could mean the street, and in New York of 1887, a dismissed maid faced starvation or worse. "It's not settled," she said softly, her green eyes steady. "Mr. Blackwell will sort it." Mrs. Finley snorted, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. At 50, She had seen scandals come and go in the grand houses of Fifth Avenue, from Vanderbilt affairs to Astor whispers. Sought it? That Victoria's from old Boston money? Or so she claims. Her family's mills are drowning in debt, mark my words. She's after the Blackwell fortune like a cat after cream. But accusing you? Bold, that one. The cook leaned in, voice dropping. Watch your back, girl. Women like her don't forgive witnesses. The words landed like stones in Olivia's stomach. She thought of her own losses, the farm sold for debts, her parents buried under Pennsylvania soil. This job was her lifeline, paying enough for a cramped room in a boarding house and dreams of saving for a small shop someday. To lose it now. No. She pushed the thought away, but the note's cryptic warning, "The boy sees too much," gnawed at her. Who was C? A creditor? A conspirator? Upstairs, the incident that shattered the fragile peace erupted without warning. Ethan Blackwell stormed into the drawing room, where Victoria lounged on a chaise, fanning herself with ivory feathers, despite the cool autumn air. The room gleamed with excess, velvet settees in crimson, a grand piano polished to a mirror shine, crystal decanters catching the light on a sideboard. He clutched a sheaf of papers, letters from his lawyers, inked in formal script, detailing irregularities in Victoria's family accounts. His face, usually a mask of Tycoon resolve, twisted with betrayal. "Explain this," he demanded, slamming the documents onto the inlaid table. His wool suit jacket strained across his broad shoulders, the gold cufflinks glinting like accusations. At 42, Ethan had built his steel empire from Pittsburgh forges to New York boardrooms, but personal deceit cut deeper than any rival's sabotage. Victoria rose gracefully, her burgundy silk gown whispering against the rug, its bustle swaying like a serpent's tail. She touched his arm, blue eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Darling, what on earth? Those must be mistakes. My father handles the finances. Debts mounting for years. And this." He pulled a small velvet pouch from his pocket, spilling a single pearl earring onto the table, Eliza's missing since the brooch incident. "Found in your reticule during the search. Noah wasn't mistaken. You've been pilfering heirlooms to pawn, haven't you, to cover your family's ruin?" Her composure cracked, fan trembling. "It's not like that. We need the money, for the wedding, for us. Your wealth could save us all. I love you, Ethan. This changes nothing." "Everything," he growled, stepping back. The air thickened with the scent of beeswax polish and unspoken fury. In the Gilded Age, marriages were alliances. Fortunes merged like railroads, but theft, that was a line crossed in blood. "The engagement is off. Leave this house by nightfall." Victoria's face paled, then flushed crimson. She snatched the letters, crumpling one in her gloved fist. "You fool! Without me, your precious name will be dragged through the society pages. I'll tell them you drove me to it. The grieving widower cruel to his betrothed. And that maid, I'll swear she put me up to it, seducing you with her common wiles." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Threats now? Go. My carriage will take you to your family's hotel." She swept out, skirts billowing, but not before hissing over her shoulder, "This isn't over. You'll regret casting me aside." The rupture rippled downward like a stone in a pond. Olivia, summoned to the drawing room by a footman, entered to find Ethan pacing, Noah clinging to his leg with his wooden train clutched tight. The boy's freckled face was tear-streaked, curls disheveled. "Papa, is the bad lady gone?" Ethan knelt, ruffling the hair. "For now, son. But we must be careful." He looked up at Olivia, his stern features softening just a fraction. "Miss Hargrove, Victoria's departure. It stirred things. Rumors will fly. I need your help with Noah, more than before. Stay close. No one else can be trusted yet." Olivia hesitated, the weight of his words pressing down. To step beyond her role as maid risked everything: scandal, dismissal, her reputation in tatters among the servant class. Society's eyes watched, the butlers' networks, the ladies' maids' tales, spreading to every parlour from here to Newport. "Sir, I'm honoured, but please," he said, voice low, urgent. The plea hung between them, a bridge over the chasm of class. Noah reached for her hand, small fingers warm. In that moment the rules shifted. No longer just polishing silver, but guarding secrets. Navigating the viper's nest of high society's vengeance, she nodded, throat tight. "I'll do what I can, sir." But as she led Noah away to the nursery, a knock echoed from the front door. A messenger in livery, bearing Victoria's seal, thrust a sealed envelope into the butler's hands. Inside, a note promising slander in the evening society columns unless Ethan reconsidered. The first obstacle loomed: public calumny, turning allies wary, protocols of etiquette now weapons. Olivia glanced back at Ethan, his silhouette framed by the window. The city sprawled beyond, like a glittering trap. The status quo shattered, forcing her into the fray. What vendettas would Victoria unleash? And how far would Olivia go to protect the boy, and perhaps the man who had unwittingly become her anchors? The shadows lengthened, and with them the call to action rang clear. Refusal meant ruin, acceptance, a path into the unknown heart of the Blackwell world. The crisp autumn air of 1887 carried the scent of coal smoke and fallen leaves as Olivia Hargrove stepped out of the Blackwell carriage onto the bustling sidewalk of Madison Avenue. Her heart raced beneath the modest grey woolen cloak draped over her service dress, its high neckline and long sleeves a shield against the prying eyes of New York's elite. It had been 2 days since Victoria's dramatic exit, and Ethan's request echoed in her mind: stay close, protect Noah. Now she found herself thrust into uncharted territory, accompanying the boy and his father to a semi-public gathering at the home of Mrs. Astor, the undisputed queen of society, for an afternoon tea honouring charitable causes. Maids did not attend such affairs, but with Victoria's threats looming like storm clouds, Ethan had insisted. "Discretion is our ally," he had said that morning, his voice low in the foyer as he adjusted Noah's tiny woolen jacket. "And you, Miss Hargrove, are family now, in a way." Olivia glanced at Noah, who skipped ahead, his small hand clutching hers. The 5-year-old's curls bounced under his velvet cap, his freckled cheeks flushed with excitement. "Livy, will there be cakes? The ones with the cream?" His innocent question eased the knot in her chest, if only a little. Ethan walked beside them, tall and commanding in his tailored black frock coat, the silver-headed cane tapping the granite pavement. At 42, he moved with the purposeful stride of a man who owned half the railroad snaking across the continent. Yet today, his dark eyes scanned the crowd warily, as if expecting shadows to stir. The Astor residence loomed ahead, a brownstone fortress of arched windows and wrought-iron gates, where gas lanterns already flickered against the fading light. Carriages lined the street, their lacquered sides emblazoned with family crests: Vanderbilts, Goles, the old guard of the Gilded Age. Ladies in bustled gowns of imported silk descended, feathers nodding in their elaborate hats, gloved hands adjusting reticules heavy with calling cards. Gentlemen in pinstriped trousers and silk cravats followed, murmuring of stock fluctuations and transatlantic steamers. As the butler ushered them into the opulent parlour, Olivia felt the weight of invisible scrutiny. The room buzzed with refined chatter, crystal clinking against porcelain, as servants, junior footmen in livery, circulated trays of cucumber sandwiches and lemon ices. Chandeliers of bohemian glass cast a warm glow over velvet-upholstered chairs and potted palms, the air scented with attar of roses and fresh orchids from hothouses. Mrs. Astor, regal at 60, held court near the marble fireplace, her black bombazine gown a stark contrast to the jewel-toned silks around her. She nodded coolly at Ethan, her sharp eyes flicking to Olivia with a raised brow. "A maid here," whispers rippled like silk skirts. "Mr. Blackwell, a pleasure," Mrs. Astor said, extending a hand adorned with a massive emerald ring. Her voice was polished steel. "And young Noah, charming, though I hear your household has endured turbulence of late." The words hung, laced with implication. Victoria's note had indeed reached the society columns, a veiled item in the New York Herald that morning, hinting at a jilted bride's sorrow in a certain steel magnate's home, with whispers of undue influence from below stairs. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he smiled evenly, bowing over her hand. "Turbulence passes, madam, as does gossip." He guided Noah forward, the boy offering a shy curtsy drilled into him by the governess. Olivia lingered at the edge, tasked with keeping the child near, but the class friction pressed in like a too-tight corset. A cluster of ladies nearby, dowagers in lace shawls and cameos, eyed her openly. One, Mrs. Vanderbilt's sister, leaned to her companion. Blackwell's maid, parading as chaperone. How quaint, or desperate. Heat rose in Olivia's cheeks. She straightened, focusing on Noah as he marveled at a silver tea service etched with vines, but the subtle humiliation stung. She was no guest, merely tolerated for the boy's sake. Ethan caught her gaze across the room, his expression unreadable, but he inclined his head slightly, a micro-gesture of acknowledgement, perhaps reassurance. It was the first crack in his Tycoon's armor, a silent bridge over the chasm of their stations. As tea progressed, the gathering shifted to lighter topics, the upcoming Metropolitan Opera season, the latest Worth gowns from Paris, the plight of orphanages that this event ostensibly supported. Noah grew restless, tugging Olivia toward a grand piano in the corner, its ebony case gleaming under a fringed shawl. "Play something, Livy? Like at home?" She hesitated, glancing at Ethan, who was deep in conversation with a banker, his broad back turned. The room's attention might turn mocking, but the boy's plea tugged at her. In the quiet hours after duties, she had played for Noah on the Blackwell's upright, simple melodies from her farm days, hymns and folk tunes that eased the mansion's echoing silence. "Just one," she whispered, seating herself on the bench. Her fingers, calloused yet nimble, danced over the keys, coaxing a gentle rendition of Shenandoah, its notes floating like river mist. Heads turned. Noah beamed, swaying in place. For a moment the parlor hushed, the melody weaving through the chatter. Ethan broke from his talk, his eyes meeting hers over the crowd. There, in that shared silence, a spark ignited, a small emotional advance, his stern features softening into something like wonder. He mouthed a silent, "Thank you," his hand pausing mid-gesture, as if the music had stirred memories of Eliza's own playing, but the antagonist lurked in the shadows. From a side door, half concealed by a brocade curtain, a figure watched. Victoria's maid, a wiry woman of 30 with a pinched face and starched cap, sent as a spy. She slipped a note into her pocket, scribbled hastily, "The maid performs, Blackwell watches. Leverage." It vanished into the folds of her apron as she melted back into the servants' passage. The song ended to polite applause, Mrs. Astor inclining her head with faint approval. "A hidden talent, miss. Hargrove, is it?" Though one wonders at the propriety. The comment landed like a veiled barb, measuring rejection amid tepid acceptance. Olivia rose, cheeks burning, and took Noah's hand. Ethan approached then, his presence a subtle defense. "Well played," he murmured, close enough that his sleeve brushed her arm, a fleeting touch, electric in its restraint. "You've a gift." The warmth lingered as they prepared to leave, but outside, a newsboy hawked the evening edition. Ethan bought one, scanning the society page. There, in bold type. Blackwell heiress scandal deepens, Maid's melody masks motives. Victoria's handiwork, no doubt, twisting the afternoon into fodder for the ton. The carriage door closed with a thud, the city lights blurring past, but the hook of consequence sank deep. Whispers would spread, alliances tested, and Olivia's fragile integration to this new world now teetered on the edge of public scorn. How long before the shadows closed in? The rain came down in sheets that evening, turning the streets of New York into rivers of mud and gaslight reflections. Olivia Hargrove, huddled in the corner of the Blackwell carriage, her grey woolen cloak damp from the dash inside, Noah asleep against her side with his head on her lap. The storm had hit without mercy as they returned from Mrs. Astor's tea, thunder rumbling like the approach of an elevated train, lightning cracking the sky over the spires of Trinity Church. Ethan Blackwell sat opposite, his frock coat unbuttoned, broad shoulders tense as the vehicle jolted over cobblestones slick with water. At 42, he seemed larger in the confined space, his presence filling the velvet-lined interior, but his dark eyes held a weariness that the downpour mirrored. "Driver says the bridge over the East River is flooding," Ethan muttered, wiping fog from the window with a gloved hand. "We'll be stuck at the house longer than planned. No mill meeting tonight." His voice carried the gravel of frustration, the day's whispers from the society pages still fresh, Victoria's poison pen twisting Olivia's piano moment into something scandalous. Olivia nodded, her auburn hair frizzing under her sodden cap, green eyes fixed on the boy's peaceful face. Noah's curls stuck to his forehead, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the rain's patter on the roof. She stroked his hand gently, the calluses on her fingers a reminder of her world below stairs. The carriage lurched to a halt before the mansion's iron gates, footmen rushing out with lanterns that bobbed like fireflies in the gale. Inside, the gas lamps were already lit, casting long shadows across the marble foyer where Mrs. Finley waited, shawl clutched tight. "Storm's a devil," the cook grumbled, helping Noah as Ethan lifted him. "Power's out in the lower city, no telegraph lines holding." The house felt smaller that night, the storm sealing them in like a velvet tomb. Servants shuttered the windows against the wind's howl, coal fires crackling in hearths to chase the chill. Olivia changed into a dry dress, still modest grey wool, mended at the cuffs, then carried Noah to the nursery, tucking him into his four-poster bed with its lace canopy. The boy stirred, murmuring, "Livy, don't go far." She promised she wouldn't, lingering until his breaths evened out. Downstairs, the drawing room glowed with firelight, the grand piano a silent sentinel in the corner. Ethan stood by the mantel staring into the flames, a crystal tumbler of whiskey in his hand, amber liquid swirling like the tempest outside. He had shed his coat, his white shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing forearms corded from years of gripping reins and signing deals. The air smelled of burning oak and wet wool, the storm's fury rattling the panes. "Miss Hargrove," he said without turning, his voice softer than usual, "join me. The roads are impassable. No point sending you back to your boarding house tonight." She hesitated in the doorway, hands clasped before her. Maids retired to their quarters after duties, not to parlours with masters. But the night's isolation blurred lines, Victoria's threats a distant echo drowned by the rain. "As you wish, sir." She perched on the edge of a settee, the velvet cool against her palms. Ethan turned, his grey-streaked hair tousled, shadows deepening the lines around his eyes. He set the glass down and crossed to a lacquered cabinet, retrieving a small wooden box etched with initials, E.B. and E.H. For Eliza Hargrove, no relation to her, but the name struck like fate. "This was hers," he said, opening it to reveal a locket on a gold chain, simple yet worn from loving hands. Inside, a miniature portrait of a young woman with kind eyes and auburn waves, much like Olivia's own. Eliza. She played that piano too, hymns mostly, to soothe Noah when he fussed as a babe. Olivia's throat tightened. She had glimpsed Eliza's portrait in the hall, a ghost in oil paints, but this felt intimate, a wound laid bare. She sounds gentle. "I'm sorry for your loss, sir. 3 years now." He nodded, sinking into the armchair opposite, the firelight dancing on his face. "Fever took her quick after Noah. Doctors came with their leeches and tonics, but nothing held. I was in Pittsburgh closing a rail deal. Came home to..." Silence. His voice cracked, just a fraction, the Tycoon's armor slipping. Guilt etched his features, the duty of empire pulling him away, leaving her to fade alone. "I built all this steel and smoke, but couldn't save her." Noah barely remembers her laugh. The confession hung between them, raw as the storm's wind. Olivia leaned forward, her own past rising unbidden. "I know loss, sir. My parents, drought on the farm, sold everything in Pennsylvania, buried them side by side under a lone oak. Came here thinking city lights meant escape, but it's just harder shadows." Her words tumbled out, soft and steady, the confinement loosening her tongue. No grand revelations, just shared grief, humanizing the man across from her, not a titan but a father hollowed by regret. Ethan met her gaze, the locket chain glinting as he extended it. "Hold it. Feel the weight she carried." Their fingers brushed as she took it, a fleeting warmth that shifted the air, tacit, electric, a promise of trust forged in vulnerability. No words of forever, just a nod, his eyes holding hers longer than propriety allowed. "You've been a steady hand for Noah, for us. In this house of echoes, that matters." The moment stretched, the fire popping like applause, until a knock shattered it. The butler entered, drenched from a venture to the door, holding a sealed letter. "From Miss Langford, solicitor, sir, delivered by messenger who braved the flood." Ethan's face hardened as he broke the wax, scanning the script. Olivia watched his jaw clench, color draining. "She's suing," he said flatly, crumpling the page. "Breach of promise. Claims I seduced her, then discarded her. For a maid's influence, no less. Demands half my holdings or she'll drag it through the courts, naming you in the scandal." The warmth fled, replaced by ice. Olivia's hands trembled, the locket suddenly heavy as chains. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the rain-swept windows, but inside, the storm had only begun. Trust, built in whispers, now faced the onslaught of public ruin. What retaliation would Victoria unleash next? The storm's fury had ebbed by dawn, leaving the Blackwell mansion shrouded in a damp mist that clung to the gas lamps like unspoken regrets. Olivia Hargrove rose early, her limbs heavy from a night spent in the guest room's narrow bed, the locket's weight still echoing in her thoughts. She slipped into her grey woolen dress, its fabric stiff from hasty drying by the kitchen fire, and descended to the servants' hall where Mrs. Finlay already kneaded dough on the scarred table. The air smelled of yeast and charred coal, the cook's face etched with worry lines deeper than usual. "Letters came with the post," Mrs. Finlay said without preamble, nodding to a stack by the tea caddy. "More trouble from that viper. The whole staff knows now, words out like wildfire." Olivia's stomach twisted. She poured weak tea into a chipped cup, steam rising in fragile curls, but the brew turned bitter on her tongue. Victoria's lawsuit loomed, a noose tightening around the fragile trust built in the rain-lashed drawing room. Ethan had dismissed her to bed with a curt goodnight. His broad shoulders slumped as he stared at the crumpled note. No more shared silences, no brush of fingers. The chasm between maid and master had yawned wider, pulling her back to her place. Upstairs, the breakfast parlour buzzed with tension. Ethan sat at the mahogany table, his starched collar askew for once, dark hair uncombed. Noah poked at his porridge. The wooden train abandoned beside his bowl, his freckled face clouded. "Papa, why's everyone whispering? Is the bad lady coming back?" Ethan ruffled the boy's curls, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, son. Just grown-up business. Eat up. We've a park outing planned." But his voice held a strain, the Tycoon's resolve cracking under the weight of legal threats. At 42, he had faced strikes and sabotaged rails, but this, personal betrayal twisted into public spectacle, cut to the bone. Olivia entered with the tray, balancing silver pots of coffee and cream. Her green eyes met his briefly, a flicker of the night's warmth, but he looked away, jaw clenched. "Miss Hargrove," he said formally, as if the storm had washed away their intimacy, "the outing... Perhaps it's best you stay behind today. With the rumors, your presence might fuel the fire." The words landed like a slap. Isolation, swift and sharp. She nodded, throat tight, setting the tray down with hands that trembled just enough to rattle the porcelain. Noah protested, tugging her apron. "But Livy comes. She tells the best stories." Ethan hushed him gently. But the boy's whine hung in the air, underscoring the fracture. As father and son departed in the carriage, hooves splashing through puddles on Fifth Avenue, Olivia retreated to the linen closet, folding sheets with mechanical precision. The house felt emptier, echoes amplifying her solitude. Whispers from the maids confirmed it. The New York Tribune carried a front-page item that morning. Blackwell betrothal shattered. Maid's shadow looms over Tycoon's fortune. Penned by Victoria's allies in the press. Her name, Hargrove, splashed in ink, twisted into tales of seduction and greed. No longer invisible, she was exposed, her reputation a maid's fragile shield, shredded for all of society to pick over. By midday, the antagonist struck harder. A carriage pulled up to the mansion's gates, disgorging two stern-faced men in black suits, briefcases in hand. Victoria's solicitors, flanked by a notary bearing affidavits. Mrs. Finley ushered them to the study, her mob cap askew, while Olivia eavesdropped from the hall, heart pounding against her ribs. "Mr. Blackwell is absent," the butler intoned, but the lead solicitor, a thin man with a pinched mustache, waved a paper. "Then deliver this to the staff. Miss Langford demands restitution, $50,000 or public deposition. She'll testify under oath that the maid, Olivia Hargrove, conspired to end the engagement, using undue influence on the child and the master himself. Forged letters, planted jewels, the works. It will ruin him in the courts and the clubs." The butler's face paled, but he accepted the documents, the wax seal cracking like breaking ice. Word spread below stairs like gossip at a wake. Bridget cornered Olivia in the scullery, eyes wide. "They're saying you bewitched him. Victoria's people are at the boarding house, talking to your landlady. If this goes to trial, you'll be the villain, homeless, unemployable." Isolation deepened into a chasm. Olivia fled to the garden, the autumn leaves sodden underfoot, the iron bench cold through her skirts. Tears stung her eyes, hot and unbidden. She had crossed no lines, shared only stories and a locket's memory, yet here she stood, cast as the schemer. The point of no return crystallized. To fight meant dragging her name through muddied courts, where a maid's word weighed less than a society dame's whisper. To flee. Abandon Noah, the boy who had pointed truth like a beacon. Ethan returned at dusk, face thunderous, Noah trailing sleepy-eyed. He found her in the kitchen, staring at the dying fire. "It's worse than I thought," he said, voice low, pulling off his gloves. "Victoria's escalated, sent investigators to your past, digging for dirt on your family farm. Allies are pulling back. The bank delayed my loan over the scandal, and you—" He paused, the firelight etching regret on his features. I can't protect you here, not without making it worse. The trust we built, it's poisoned now. She rose, chin lifted despite the ache. Sir, I know. His hand hovered, as if to touch her shoulder, then fell. The emotional severance cut deepest, their budding alliance severed by public glare. Pack your things. I'll arrange passage to a cousin in Philadelphia, a reference, funds for a fresh start. But you can't stay. The lawsuit names you. Proximity damns us both. Noah burst in then, clutching a fallen leaf. Livy's leaving? No. He ran to her, burying his face in her skirts, sobs muffled. Ethan knelt, pulling him away gently, but the boy's cries echoed, a tangible loss ripping through the room. Olivia's world tilted. No return to the simple days of polishing silver and bedtime tales. The action was irrevocable, exile, self-imposed to shield the innocent. As she gathered her few belongings, a pressed wildflower, the hidden note from the linens, she glimpsed Ethan in the hall, silhouetted against the gaslight, his broad frame bowed. Their eyes met one last time, a silent ultimatum hanging. Survival demanded separation, but the heart whispered of paths untaken. Outside, the mist thickened into fog, swallowing the carriage lights as it bore her away. Victoria's shadow lengthened, her frontal assault fracturing alliances and reputations alike. What ultimatum would follow, pulling Ethan deeper into the fray? The fog clung to the streets of Philadelphia like a shroud, 2 weeks after Olivia's reluctant departure from the Blackwell mansion. But inside the modest boarding house on Walnut Street, clarity began to pierce the haze. Olivia Hargrove, at 20, sat by the window of her cramped room, the gas lamp flickering over a scattering of papers on the scarred oak table. Her grey woolen dress, travel-worn and patched at the elbow, hung loosely on her frame, thinned by nights of restless worry. The city hummed beyond, horse cars clanging on tracks, vendors crying chestnuts roasted over coal braziers. But her mind dwelled on New York, on Noah's tear-streaked face and Ethan's bowed silhouette in the gaslight. The letter from Ethan had arrived 3 days prior, sealed with black wax, its script hurried and terse. Stay hidden. Victoria's suit advances. She's rallied the press. Funds enclosed for your keep. No warmth, no mention of the locket's shared weight or the storm's confessions. Just duty, cold as Pennsylvania winters. But tucked inside was something more. A small ledger, dog-eared and inked in a hand, not his own. Eliza's, perhaps? No. Victoria's family accounts, pilfered by Ethan's lawyers during the chaos. Olivia's fingers traced the columns, debts mounting like snowdrifts, from Boston textile mills crippled by strikes to loans from shadowy creditors marked only as C. The initial from the linen note. Charles Langford, Victoria's brother, a gambler whose horse races and stock speculations had bled the family dry. Her breath caught. This was the structural truth, the web of manipulation spun not just for heirlooms, but for Ethan's empire. Victoria hadn't stolen for desperation alone. It was a plot to force marriage, then control through scandal. The ledger detailed forged endorsements, bribes to witnesses, maids paid to swear Olivia had planted the brooch, and there in faded ink, frame the girl. Boy's testimony unravels if she's the villain. Indignation surged, hot and righteous, against the woman who had twisted innocence into crime. Olivia rose, pulse quickening. Exile wouldn't silence her. She had agency now, forged in loss and loyalty. Penning a letter to Ethan's solicitor, a bold move for a maid. She enclosed copies of key entries, her words steady. This proves the conspiracy. Publish it discreetly. Let society see the viper's scales. But words alone wouldn't suffice. She needed public proof, a stand that reframed her not as shadow, but light. Back in New York, The revelation unfolded like a thunderclap at Ethan's downtown office, overlooking the Hudson, where barges groaned under iron loads. The Tycoon, 42 and battle-hardened, paced the Persian rug, broad shoulders straining his wool vest as rain lashed the windows. The solicitor, a wiry man with spectacles perched on a beakish nose, laid out the ledger on the mahogany desk. "Miss Hargrove's doing, sir. Sent from Philadelphia. It's damning. Ties Victoria to her brother's schemes. Debts over $200,000, all aimed at your fortune." Ethan's dark eyes, shadowed by grief's remnants, widened. Not coldness had kept him distant these weeks. It was duty, to shield her from the fray, guilt over Eliza's death, twisting every protective instinct into isolation. The maid, Olivia. She risked everything. He sank into the leather chair, fingers drumming the arm. The reframe hit hard. She wasn't a fleeting comfort, but a partner in truth, her trust a beacon amid his self-imposed walls. Peak of hope crested as he summoned a trusted ally, Mrs. Astor herself, to his club that evening. The oak-paneled room at the Union League reeked of cigar smoke and polished leather, gas chandeliers casting a golden haze over crystal decanters. Mrs. Astor, 60 and imperious in her black silk gown with jet beads, sipped sherry from a thistle-etched glass. "Blackwell, your scandals amuse the ton, but this—" She arched a brow as he slid the ledger across. "Manipulation, madam. Victoria's plot to ruin me and an innocent." He detailed the proofs, the ledger's tallies, a retrieved diary from Victoria's abandoned trunks, pages confessing jealousy over Noah's bond with Olivia, vows to eliminate the common threat. Testimony from a bribed footman now recanting under oath. Mrs. Astor's lips thinned, indignation mirroring his own. The villain's greed, preying on a widower's vulnerability and a child's purity, ignited a shared fury. "The harpy will fall," she declared, her voice steel. "I'll host a salon tomorrow. You bring the evidence. Let the ladies judge." But the valley of danger followed swift. As Ethan left the club, a carriage shadowed his, Victoria's man, reporting back. She struck from her Boston hotel, firing off letters to the Times. Blackwell's maid ally, forged lies to defame a lady. Whispers poisoned drawing rooms. Allies wavered. One banker withdrawing support with a curt note. "Scandal taints steel." The threat escalated, each revelation met with retaliation. Investigators hounding Olivia's Philadelphia landlady, dredging her farm past for smears. Undeterred, Olivia acted. From her boarding house she penned a public initiative. An open letter to the Women's Charitable Society circulated via post to key matrons. "As a servant wronged, I appeal for justice, not vengeance. Let truth mend what deceit tore." She enclosed a portrait miniature. Eliza's locket opened to reveal the resemblance, Olivia's auburn waves echoing the late wife's, a subtle proof of her unassuming heart. The letter hit parlors like a spark on dry tinder, altering perceptions. From schemer to steadfast heroine, her words evoking sympathy, demands for a hearing. Reapproximation bloomed contained in a telegraph from Ethan that night. "Your courage shames my hesitation. Trust endures. Return for the salon. Equals in this fight. No passion's fire. Just deepening alliance. Guilt yielding to partnership." Olivia's heart swelled, a quiet advance amid the peril. Yet Victoria's response loomed larger. A summons arrived at dawn, delivered by express rider. "The Langford Assembly at the Waldorf tomorrow night. Face me publicly or the courts devour you both." The hook sank deep, a decisive confrontation in the glittering hall, where society's gaze would forge victory or shatter all. The chandeliers of the Waldorf Hotel blazed like captured stars, their crystal prisms scattering light across the grand ballroom where New York's elite swirled in a sea of silk and satin. It was the night of the Langford Assembly, 1887's social pinnacle, where fortunes danced on the edge of whispers and waltzes. Ethan Blackwell entered through the gilded doors, his broad frame cutting a path in a tailored black tuxedo, the starched white shirt crisp against his neck. At 42, he moved with the resolve of a man staking his empire, but his dark eyes scanned the crowd for threats. Beside him walked Olivia Hargrove, no longer in grey wool, but a borrowed gown of deep emerald taffeta, its modest high neckline and fitted bodice lending her a quiet elegance that turned heads. At 20, her auburn hair was swept up in soft curls, pinned with pearl combs from Eliza's collection, a subtle armor. Noah clung to her hand, his small velvet suit impeccable, freckled face alight with the room's magic, oblivious to the storm brewing. The air hummed with violin strings and the rustle of bustled gowns, scents of orchids and French perfume mingling with the faint tang of champagne from silver buckets. Mrs. Astor held court near the marble staircase, her black velvet gown adorned with diamonds, nodding to Ethan with a conspiratorial glint. Whispers rippled, the Blackwell scandal, Victoria's bold summons, the maid elevated to guest. "Bold move," murmured a Vanderbilt dowager to her companion, fan fluttering like a warning flag. Olivia felt the scrutiny like pins, her green eyes steady despite the flush creeping up her neck. This was no tea. It was the arena, society's unyielding jury. Victoria Langford descended the staircase like a queen dethroned, her gown of crimson silk clinging to her slender form, golden curls cascading under a diamond tiara. At 28, she radiated calculated poise, but her blue eyes burned with desperation as she spotted them. "Ethan, darling," she called, voice honey over venom gliding forward with gloved hands extended. "And Miss Hargrove, how fitting. You've come to beg forgiveness before the ton." The room hushed, dancers pausing mid-step, glasses hovering. Ethan stepped forward, his voice low thunder. "We've come for truth, Victoria. No more shadows." He nodded to Mrs. Astor, who signaled the orchestra to silence. The assembly shifted, a circle forming around the central dais where a podium stood, prepared for speeches on charitable causes. But tonight, for reckoning. Victoria laughed, sharp as shattering crystal. "Truth? From a jilted groom and his pet servant?" She snapped her fingers, and a liveried footman approached with a leather dossier, its brass clasp gleaming. "Behold the proofs, letters forged in her hand, witnesses to her whispers in your ear, turning you against me. She schemed for your bed and your gold, using the boy as bait." The dossier opened, spilling documents onto a side table. Yellowed papers, scripted accusations from bought maids, even a false affidavit claiming Olivia had stolen not just the brooch, but Eliza's locket to mimic the widow's ghost. Gasps echoed. A banker ally of Ethan's shifted uncomfortably, while ladies clutched pearls, eyes darting to Olivia. Humiliation crested, the community's judgment teetering. Noah tugged her skirt, whispering, "Livy, it's lies." But Victoria pressed, summoning her key witness, her brother Charles, a gaunt man of 35 in a rumpled tailcoat, reeking of last night's whiskey. "Tell them," she urged. "The maid confessed to you in the kitchens, plotted to frame me for the debts." Charles cleared his throat, voice slurring slightly. "Aye, she did. Said the Tycoon's heart was hers." The trap snapped shut, sabotage complete. Olivia's heart pounded, but she held Ethan's gaze across the circle. A silent vow. This was the moral crux. Yield to lies or claim the light. Ethan raised a hand, calm as a closing deal. "Enough theatre." From his inner pocket, he drew the ledger, its pages fanned like a deck of cards. Mrs. Astor joined him, her presence a shield as the solicitor from Philadelphia stepped forward, spectacles glinting. "Counterproofs, ladies and gentlemen. This ledger from Miss Langford's own trunks details the conspiracy. Debts forged, bribes paid, $200,000 aimed at Mr. Blackwell's fortune." He read aloud, voice steady. Entries of pilfered heirlooms pawned in Boston, payments to false witnesses. The chilling note, frame the girl, eliminate the threat. Murmurs swelled. Victoria paled, fan trembling. Lies! Fabrications! But the counterattack unfolded with precision. Mrs. Finlay, the stout cook, emerged from the servants' entrance, summoned as key witness, her mobcap starched firm. I saw Miss Langford hide the brooch myself, in the linen closet. And this. She held a crumpled note. The one Olivia had found, initialed C for Charles. The brother faltered, sweat beading on his brow. Brother dear, Victoria hissed, but he crumbled under the stairs, mumbling, it was her idea. The debts. We needed the money. The ballroom erupted in outrage. Mrs. Astor stepped to the podium, voice cutting through. Shame on such deceit. Mr. Blackwell, Miss Hargrove, the true victims here. Applause thundered, ladies turning sympathetic eyes on Olivia, reframing her from shadowed maid to resilient heroine. Victoria staggered, her crimson gown wilting like faded rose, as Charles dragged her toward the side door. Exile awaits you, Miss Langford, a dowager spat. No house in New York will receive such venom. Euphoria crested. A tidal wave of vindication. Ethan turned to Olivia amid the cheers, his hand finding hers in the crush, tacit, profound, a commitment sealed in public gaze. Noah hugged her legs, beaming. The community's embrace washed away the valleys of doubt, validating every whispered trust, every storm-shared grief. Victoria's final glare dissolved into the crowd's scorn, her empire of lies crumbling like ash. As the orchestra struck up a triumphant waltz, the post-storm silence between Ethan and Olivia spoke volumes. His fingers lingered on hers, a promise of horizons beyond scandal. But in the shadows of the balcony, a faint rustle hinted at loose ends, a letter from an old creditor, perhaps, whispering of deeper debts unpaid. What final ripple would test their newfound bond? If this victory has you cheering, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss another thrilling tale from the Gilded Age. The morning after the Waldorf Assembly dawned crisp and golden over New York, the autumn sun piercing the fog that had shrouded the city like a veil of forgotten scandals. Ethan Blackwell stood at the window of his study in the mansion on Fifth Avenue, the Hudson's distant gleam, a reminder of empires rebuilt from ruins. At 42, his broad shoulders no longer carried the weight of isolation. The night's triumph had lifted it, leaving a quiet resolve in his dark eyes, streaked hair combed back with purpose. The gas lamps, unlit now, stood as sentinels to the transformation. The house, once echoing with deceit, now breathed freer. Downstairs, the legal threads unraveled with swift justice. Ethan's solicitor arrived by carriage at 9, briefcases heavy with affidavits and decrees. Victoria Langford's suit crumbled under the ledger's weight. The courts, swayed by Mrs. Astor's influential testimony and the recanted witnesses, dismissed her claims outright. Breach of promise reversed, the wiry lawyer declared, adjusting his spectacles over the mahogany desk. She's sanctioned, restitution for your costs, plus exile from New York society. No invitations, no credits at the banks. Her brother Charles faces fraud charges, debt seized, mills auctioned to cover the $200,000. Ethan nodded, fists unclenching. The antagonist's fall was concrete. Her crimson gown traded for a steamer trunk bound for Europe, whispers following her like shadows. Let her go, he said, voice steady. No prisons, just the wilderness of her making. Charles, the gaunt gambler, slunk to obscurity in Boston's underbelly, his horse bets frozen by liens, the family's textile legacy, once gilded, now tarnished tin. Olivia Hargrove entered then, Noah at her side, the boy's hand swinging hers with unbridled joy. She wore a simple day dress of soft blue cotton, its modest lines a far cry from the assembly's finery, yet it suited her quiet strength. At 20, her green eyes held a new light. Compassion tempered by fire, her auburn hair loose in waves that echoed Eliza's portrait without imitation. The transformation shone in her posture, no longer bowed by service, but lifted by agency. "The papers say it's over," she said softly, setting a tray of coffee on the sideboard. Steam curled from the silver pot, carrying the rich aroma that filled the room like hope. Ethan turned, his gaze lingering on her with the warmth of equals. "It is, thanks to you." Noah scampered to the rug, wooden train chugging across the Persian weave, his freckled laughter a balm. The boy had paid no price. Instead, his innocence crowned him hero in the society's retellings, matrons sending toys and invitations in waves. They sealed their bond that afternoon in the garden, away from prying eyes. The air hummed with the last of summer's bees among the rose trellises, leaves turning amber under the sun. Ethan drew a small velvet box from his coat, no heirloom burdened by ghosts, but a new gold band, simple and unadorned, forged fresh from his mills. "Olivia," he said, voice low, taking her hand. The touch was deliberate, no accident of storm or crowd. "Not as master to maid, but as man to woman. Will you stand with me, build this life anew?" Her heart swelled, tears pricking her eyes. No grand declarations, just choice, free, untainted. "Yes, Ethan, as equals." He slipped the ring on her finger, their palms pressing together in a ritual of promise. A soft kiss followed, born of love's quiet flame, his lips warm against hers amid the rustling leaves. It lingered, sealing what words could not, a horizon of shared tomorrows unfolding. The new equilibrium took shape swiftly. Allies reaped rewards. Mrs. Astor hosted a salon in their honor, a black silk gown swapped for one of lavender, toasting Olivia as the voice of true charity. The cook, Mrs. Finley, rose to housekeeper, her stout frame bustling with pride in a new bombazine uniform, while Bridget and the maids gained bonuses and references that opened doors to finer houses. Neutrals repositioned, bankers who wavered now courted Ethan's rails with doubled vigor, society columns praising the Blackwell redemption. Legacy bloomed from the ashes. Olivia, her voice now one of leadership, spearheaded a charitable school for orphaned girls on the Lower East Side, funded by a portion of the recovered debts. Brick by brick it rose, classrooms lit by gas, but dreaming of electric futures, where daughters of maids learned letters and ledgers. Ethan joined her there weekly, his compassion evident in the way he knelt to speak with the children, broad hands gentle as he handed out slates. Noah, thriving at 6 months hence, attended the opening ribbon cutting, his small scissors snipping the silk to cheers. One evening, as dusk painted the mansion's windows rose gold, they stood on the balcony overlooking Central Park. Noah played below with a new puppy, a gift from Mrs. Astor, his laughter carrying on the breeze. Ethan drew Olivia close, arm around her waist, the ring glinting like a star. "We've built more than steel," he murmured, kissing her temple, the image etched eternal. A family forged in truth, the city sprawling before them, a glittering beast tamed, legacies in motion from scandal's forge. Yet a soft echo lingered. A letter arrived at week's end, postmarked Boston, from an old creditor unnamed. "Debts paid, but vigilance remains. Watch the shadows." Ethan burned it in the study fire. But the horizon held promise, and perhaps one more tale untold. 10 years had woven their gentle threads through the fabric of New York, transforming the Blackwell mansion from a fortress of secrets into a haven of quiet laughter and blooming roses. It was 1897 now, and the city pulsed with the hum of innovation. Elevated trains screeching overhead, electric trolleys sparking along Broadway, though the mansion clung to its gas lamps and horse-drawn carriages, a deliberate nod to the era that had forged its family. Ethan Blackwell, at 52, stood broader, yet somehow lighter, his once stern features softened by time and triumphs. Silver threaded his dark hair fully now, but his broad shoulders still carried the weight of an empire expanded. Steel mills, humming from Pittsburgh to Chicago, railroads stitching the nation like iron veins. He paused in the sunlit garden, watching the scene before him, with eyes that held the depth of battles won and losses mended. Olivia, now Mrs. Olivia Blackwell, knelt among the flower beds, her hands, no longer calloused from scrubbing, but gentle from teaching, guiding a cluster of children in planting tulip bulbs. At 30, she moved with the grace of one who had claimed her place, her auburn hair loosely pinned in a style that echoed the simple elegance of her youth, though now accented by a lace collar on her soft woolen gown. The emerald ring from that garden promise still gleamed on her finger, joined by a wedding band of gold, plain and true. Their marriage, solemnized in a quiet chapel 2 springs after the Waldorf triumph, had been a union of equals. No grand society affair, but a vow exchanged under blooming dogwoods, with Noah as ring-bearer and Mrs. Finley beaming from the front pew. The love that had sparked in storm and scandal had not faded. It had deepened, rooted like the oaks shading the estate. Ethan crossed the gravel path, his boots crunching softly, and placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked up, green eyes sparkling with that same warmth that had once bridged their worlds. "The soil's rich this year," she said, brushing dirt from her palms. "They'll burst forth come spring." He smiled, the rare curve of his lips now familiar. "Like us." Their fingers intertwined briefly, a tacit affirmation amid the bustle. The children, 3 of their own now, scattered petals as they worked. Little Eliza, named for the lost wife whose locket Olivia still wore on quiet evenings, chased her brother Samuel at 7, their laughter mingling with the birdsong. The youngest, Benjamin, just 4, toddled after with a toy shovel, his freckles a mirror of Noah's. Noah himself, at 15, loped across the lawn from the stables, tall and lanky now, his curly hair tamed under a cap, leading a pony by the reins. No longer the wide-eyed boy who had pointed at guilt, he had grown into a young man of keen insight. Apprenticed in his father's offices, dreaming of engineering bridges that spanned continents. The family changes rippled outward, a legacy etched in lives reshaped. The charitable school Olivia had founded on the Lower East Side thrived. Its red brick walls expanded to house hundreds of girls, daughters of immigrants and orphans alike, learning not just letters and arithmetic, but poise and purpose. Gaslights had given way to electric bulbs in the classrooms, a concession to progress, but the ethos remained. Elevation through truth, not title. Olivia led it still, her voice carrying the authority of one who had risen from below stairs, her speeches at society galas drawing applause that echoed the Waldorf's euphoria. Ethan supported it quietly, his donations funding scholarships, his presence at openings a steady hand on her back. Social shifts had softened the Gilded Age's sharp edges. The Blackwells hosted salons now, not for alliances, but for ideas, discussing women's suffrage over tea in the drawing room, where Mrs. Astor, aged and frail at 70 but sharp as ever, still visited in her wheeled chair, jet beads clacking as she reminisced. "You too," she would say, peering over her spectacles, turned scandal to legend, the ton whispers of it still. The Vanderbilt set, once wary, now courted their favor, bridges built in steel and goodwill. Yet prices had been paid, shadows lingering in the nostalgia. Victoria Langford faded into Europe's fringes, her crimson silks pawned for passage to Paris, where she lived in diminished exile, wed to a minor count, her golden curls graying in obscurity, letters to New York scorned. Charles rotted in a Boston debtor's prison, his gambling debts compounding like interest, a gaunt warning to those who chased fortunes on lies. Mrs. Finley, retired to a cottage on the Blackwell estate, paid with her vigor. The years of below-stairs toil caught up, leaving her in a rocker by the fire, but content. Her stories of the great unmasking, entertaining the grandchildren. Even Ethan bore scars. Nights when old guilt over Eliza stirred, though Olivia's quiet songs on the piano soothed them. Shenandoah, evolving into family anthems. As evening fell, the family gathered on the veranda, lanterns flickering against the twilight. Noah recounted his day's sketches, blueprints for a rail extension, while the children piled into laps, the air scented with jasmine from Eliza's old garden. Ethan drew Olivia close, his arm around her waist, as stars pricked the sky. 10 years, he murmured, voice low for her alone, and every dawn feels like that first light after the storm. She leaned into him, hand over his on the railing. We've outrun the shadows, built something enduring. Noah glanced their way, a knowing smile crossing his face. The boy who had saved them all, now the young man who would carry the torch. The city lights twinkled below, a glittering testament to resilience. In that moment, nostalgia wrapped them like a warm shawl, emotions swelling with the fullness of lives reclaimed, love's flame steady through time's weave. The Blackwell legacy, born of a child's truth and a maid's courage, bloomed eternal, a horizon of tomorrows as vast as the rails they spanned. As the stars wheeled above the Blackwell veranda that fateful evening in 1897, Ethan and Olivia lingered in the gathering dusk, their family's laughter a symphony against the city's distant roar. The trials of a decade passed, the false accusations, the shadowed betrayals, the child's unerring truth had forged them into something unbreakable, a testament to resilience in an age of glittering facades and hidden thorns. Olivia's hand rested in Ethan's, the simple gold band a quiet anchor, while Noah and the children chased fireflies across the lawn, their joy a living legacy of the courage that had upended deceit. In the end, this tale whispers profound lessons. That innocence, often dismissed in the clamor of wealth and status, holds the sharpest blade against corruption. That love, born not of convenience but of shared trials, endures beyond the scandals that seek to shatter it. And that one voice, be it a boy's finger pointed true or a maid's steadfast heart, can unravel empires of lies and build anew from the ruins. The Gilded Age may have gilded its excesses, but it was ordinary souls like Olivia and Ethan who proved that justice blooms where truth takes root, turning victims into victors and isolation into unbreakable bonds. What moved you most in this journey through accusation and redemption, the Tycoon's awakening, the maid's quiet strength, or the little son's pivotal moment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words fuel these stories and connect us all. If you made it to this heartfelt close, type Truth Wins there to let me know you reached the end. It helps spread these tales far and wide. And don't forget to like if the drama gripped you, subscribe for more epic narratives from history's shadowed corners, and check the cards for similar gripping yarns waiting just for you. Until the next unraveling.